What if the most powerful empires in the galaxy gathered to sentence Earth to slavery, and the one thing that could save humanity was a secret they hadn't even shared with their own generals? The council chamber of Nexus Prime was not built for comfort. It was built to remind every visitor of their own insignificance. Spires of black crystal rose 300 meters into a violet sky, humming with the accumulated authority of 11,000 years of galactic law. Inside, 7 ancient civilizations sat in judgment, their delegates suspended on floating thrones arranged in a perfect circle of dominance. At the center of that circle stood a single human woman. Dr. Sarah Chun did not tremble. She had expected that of herself. The tightening throat, the shaking hands. But standing there, surrounded by beings who had crushed 1,000 worlds beneath their fleets, she felt something else entirely. Clarity, representative of Earth, intoned the Zerati speaker, his 4 eyes narrowing like closing shutters. Your species has existed for less than a single galactic rotation. You have fought 2 world wars in your own infancy, split the atom before you understood diplomacy, and now you dare address this council as equals. Laughter rippled through the chamber, not warm laughter, but the low, grinding amusement of predators observing prey that had wandered somewhere it did not belong. You are reckless, the speaker continued, violent, unworthy of the freedoms you claim. This council has already drafted terms for your species' supervision. Earth will be placed under Zerati Protectorate Authority within 1 galactic cycle. This was the moment. Sarah had rehearsed it 100 times in the shuttle on the way here, but no rehearsal prepared her for the sheer weight of 11,000 years of galactic contempt pressing down on her shoulders. And yet, she smiled. Before you vote, she said, her voice steady and carrying easily through the acoustics of the chamber, I'd like to ask the council a question. Does anyone here know what happened to Corvus Station? The chamber went utterly silent. Corvus Station was not a minor outpost. It was a fortress world of the Dren hegemony, armored in kilometers-thick plating, defended by 3 planetary shield generators, and a standing garrison of 200,000 warriors. 6 days ago, without warning, without a single detected weapons discharge, without wreckage, without survivors, without so much as a distress signal, Corvus Station had simply ceased to exist. Sensors across 4 star systems had registered nothing. No explosion, no debris field, no enemy fleet. One moment it filled the sky. The next, only stars. The Dren ambassador rose from his throne, claws visibly trembling. That is impossible. No technology in known space could accomplish that without a trace, Sarah finished for him. You're right. No technology you know of. She let the silence stretch, watching confusion ripple across faces that had never once, in 11,000 years, looked uncertain in this chamber. I'm not here to beg for mercy, she said quietly. I'm here to deliver a message. Earth will no longer be discussed as a subject of this council's judgment. We are not violent children who stumbled into your galaxy by accident. We are something you have never encountered before, and Corvus Station is only the beginning of what you don't yet understand. She turned, slowly, meeting every set of alien eyes in that circle. Respect Earth's sovereignty, she said, or face consequences beyond anything your civilizations have ever imagined. The Zerati speaker's mandibles clicked in barely restrained fury. You threaten this council with rumors and vanishing legends, human? I'm not threatening you, Sarah replied. I'm giving you a choice, and you have exactly 72 hours to decide which future you want. She stepped back from the podium. Guards moved to escort her from the chamber, but something in her calm, in the sheer certainty radiating from a single unarmed woman standing before the combined might of the galaxy, made even the council's elite honor guard hesitate before touching her. As she walked out beneath those towering black spires, one thought echoed through her mind, a memory of a briefing room half a galaxy away. 3 years earlier, where a team of exhausted physicists had gathered around a humming containment device and dared to ask a question no other civilization had ever solved. What if matter itself was never the only reality? Because the truth was this. Corvus Station hadn't been destroyed at all. It had simply been moved, phased sideways out of the universe the Dren hegemony could perceive, and into a realm no sense in the galaxy had ever detected. It was only the first demonstration of a power humanity had spent years hiding in the dark, far beyond the edge of the solar system. where no one thought to look. But the 72 hours Sarah had just given the Council were about to expire, and no one, not even Earth's own generals, knew whether the galaxy would choose peace or war. 3 years before that trial, in a place so far from Earth that sunlight was little more than a rumor, a small team of scientists was about to break a law of physics the entire galaxy assumed was unbreakable. The research station Icarus Deep orbited in the black beyond Pluto, tethered to nothing but its own solar collectors and the stubbornness of the people who worked inside it. It wasn't glamorous. It wasn't even officially acknowledged by most of Earth's governments. It was, in the words of its lead physicist, the loneliest place humanity has ever built, and the most important. Dr. Sarah Chun had been recruited to Icarus Deep 4 years earlier, pulled from a fading academic career studying a phenomenon most of her colleagues considered a scientific dead end, dark matter. It made up over 80% of the universe's mass, and yet no civilization, human or alien, had ever directly detected it, let alone controlled it. Every major galactic power had quietly abandoned dark matter research centuries ago, dismissing it as an unsolvable curiosity. That dismissal was the opening humanity needed. "We're not trying to observe it anymore," Sarah told her team on the day everything changed. "We're trying to touch it." For 18 months, the team chased failure after failure. Reactor containment breaches, catastrophic energy feedback loops, a test chamber that imploded so violently it took out an entire research wing and nearly killed 3 engineers. Morale collapsed more than once. Funding nearly dried up twice. There were nights Sarah sat alone in the station's dim observation deck, staring at a black sky full of stars that belonged to civilizations who would have laughed at what she was attempting, wondering if she'd wasted the best years of her career chasing a ghost. Then came the night everything changed. At 3:14 station time, a junior engineer named Marcus Webb ran a modified containment sequence nobody had approved, a stubborn, half-desperate variation on a failed protocol. The chamber didn't explode. It didn't implode. Instead, the small titanium test cube inside the field generator simply vanished, then reappeared 4 seconds later on the opposite side of a solid steel wall. No one breathed for a full 10 seconds. "Run again," Sarah finally whispered. They ran it 11 more times that night. 11 successes. The cube passed through solid matter as if the wall wasn't there at all, because for those 4 seconds, the cube wasn't occupying the same dimensional space as the wall. It had been phased, shifted sideways into a layer of reality bound to the dark matter field itself, untouched by conventional physics, invisible to every sense of technology known to human or alien science. It took another full year to scale the discovery from a titanium cube to something that could carry a crew. The engineering challenges were brutal. Stabilizing a phase field around a living human body without tearing them apart at the cellular level, maintaining life support through a barrier that blocked literally every known form of energy transfer, preventing a ship from drifting into a wall, a planet, or empty vacuum while it was untouchable to everything else in the universe. 3 test pilots nearly died before the safety systems were perfected. But they got there. They named the first working prototype the Prometheus. Fire stolen from the gods, technology no other civilization believed was possible. On its maiden voyage, the Prometheus did something that should have made history across the entire galaxy, though almost no one beyond a handful of Earth's highest officials would learn of it for years. It flew directly through the hull of a decommissioned naval cruiser in Earth orbit, hovered inside the ship's empty cargo bay for 11 minutes, completely undetected by every sensor board, and then phased back out the other side, without so much as scratching the paint. Admiral Torres, watching the telemetry from Mission Control, said only 3 words when the test concluded: "Rewrite the doctrine." Every strategic assumption humanity had ever made about warfare, fortifications, shields, weapons ranges, fleet formations, had just become obsolete overnight. And Sarah, standing in that control room with tears in her eyes after 4 years of failure, sacrifice, and quiet desperation, understood something the rest of the galaxy did not yet know. Humanity hadn't just invented a new form of stealth technology. They had discovered a way to become untouchable. But a working prototype was one thing. What humanity would choose to do with an entire fleet of invisible, unstoppable warships, and whether they could keep that secret long enough to matter, was a question that was about to be tested in the most dangerous way imaginable. What happens when the most powerful fortress in an alien empire simply stops existing, and nobody, not even the beings who build it, can explain why? After the Prometheus proved the technology worked, Earth's leadership faced an impossible decision. Word of humanity's advancement, if leaked prematurely, could provoke the very extinction-level invasion they were trying to prevent. 7 major galactic civilizations already viewed Earth as an unstable, resource-rich planet ripe for conquest, a primitive species too weak and divided to defend itself. If any of them learned humanity had cracked dark matter phasing before the fleet was ready, they wouldn't wait for a council vote. They would simply strike first and erase the threat before it could grow. So Earth did something almost unprecedented in the history of any species preparing for war. It built its entire arsenal in absolute silence. Shipyards were constructed in hollowed-out asteroids scattered across the Kuiper Belt, cloaked from detection by the same phase field technology being built inside them, a beautiful, self-reinforcing secret. Thousands of engineers, scientists, and military officers were sworn into a level of confidentiality that made Cold War-era security look casual by comparison. Families were told their loved ones had been assigned to deep space research postings. Even most of Earth's own government officials had no idea how far the program had progressed. Over 3 years, the fleet grew, not hundreds of ships, thousands, and then came the mission that would set everything in motion. Earth's Intelligence Division had identified Corvus Station as the single most heavily fortified military installation within 3 sectors of Sol, a Dren hegemony stronghold responsible for coordinating patrol routes that occasionally passed uncomfortably close to the outer edges of human territory. If humanity's technology was ever going to be tested against a real, hardened alien target, Command wanted proof it could succeed against the best defenses in the galaxy, not just an empty naval hulk in Earth orbit. The mission fell to a small strike team aboard 3 phase-capable vessels, commanded by Fleet Captain Elena Reyes. Their orders were unambiguous and, to some in the briefing room, almost unbelievable. Enter Corvus Station's defensive perimeter completely undetected, disable its shield generators from the inside, and extract the entire station, intact, populated, without casualties, into phase space, holding it there as proof of concept. We're not here to kill anyone, Reyes told her crew before departure. We're here to prove we don't have to. The operation took 4 minutes and 11 seconds. 3 ships slipped through Corvus's shields as though they didn't exist. Because to the station's defenses, they didn't. Sensors registered nothing. Alarms never sounded. A quiet, coordinated sequence of internal phase generators, planted throughout the station's superstructure by teams that walked its corridors completely undetected, activated simultaneously, and Corvus Station, garrison and all, slipped sideways out of conventional reality exactly as the titanium test cube had 3 years and a universe of effort earlier. To the Dren hegemony and to every sensor across 4 star systems, it looked exactly like sudden, total annihilation. No explosion, no wreckage, no warning. Just an empty patch of stars where a fortress used to be. Inside the phase station, the Dren garrison remained alive, confused, and completely unharmed, held gently in a dimension none of their instruments would perceive, awaiting a decision from a species they didn't yet know existed. Sarah, watching the mission telemetry from Earth's command center, felt no triumph. Only a heavy, complicated relief. We just proved we can erase an empire's fortress without firing a shot, she said quietly to Admiral Torres. Now we have to prove we're not going to. 6 days later, she stood in the council chamber of Nexus Prime and told the galaxy exactly that. But the 72-hour ultimatum Sarah delivered was about to run out, and the ancient empires of the galaxy were not the kind of civilizations that responded well to threats, no matter how impossible the proof behind them seemed. What if, at the exact moment an alien empire decided to strike back, they discovered they had already lost 3 months before they ever knew the war had begun? The Galactic Council 72 hours expired at 6 o'clock station time, and true to the patterns of 11,000 years of unchallenged dominance, they chose defiance. The Zerati speaker addressed an emergency session with a declaration that would have sounded courageous had it not been so catastrophically uninformed. We will not be threatened by a species that has existed for less than a heartbeat of galactic history, he announced. Corvus Station's disappearance remains unexplained, but unexplained is not the same as invincible. This council authorizes immediate military posturing against Earth and its allies. What the council did not know, what no civilization in the galaxy knew, was that the Prometheus program had not stopped after Corvus Station. It had accelerated. Over the following 3 months, in near total silence, thousands of phase-capable human vessels had spread quietly across known space, surrounding the home systems of every major galactic power. Invisible, untouchable, watching. Then, one by one, it began. A Zerati border fleet of 200 warships vanished from a training exercise near their homeworld, with no warning and no trace, exactly as Corvus Station had. A Dren hegemony strike group, patrolling a disputed sector, disappeared mid-transit. An entire orbital defense network belonging to the Kesari Dominion, considered one of the most heavily shielded military postures in the galaxy, blinked out of existence over the course of 11 minutes. Ship by ship, station by station, until nothing remained but empty orbit. Panic tore through the Galactic Council like wildfire. Emergency sessions ran around the clock. Rumors spread of an unknown, unstoppable enemy capable of erasing entire fleets without detection, without mercy, without explanation. Several member species began recalling their military forces entirely, terrified of losing them to whatever force was systematically dismantling galactic military power. Markets collapsed. Ancient alliances that had held for millennia began fracturing under the weight of mutual suspicion, because no one could prove it wasn't one of their rival civilizations secretly responsible. It was into this chaos that Dr. Sarah Chun returned to the council chamber of Nexus Prime, this time not as a defendant, but as something the galaxy had never had to negotiate with before, an equal holding all the leverage. Every fleet that has disappeared over these last 3 months, she announced to a chamber gripped in fear for the first time in its recorded history, was taken by us, not destroyed, not harmed, held exactly like Corvus Station, safely, in a dimension your technology cannot perceive, reach, or threaten. Gasps and furious murmurs rippled through the assembled delegates. We currently have over 4,000 phase-capable vessels positioned throughout every major system represented in this chamber. Sarah continued. We have been capable of neutralizing your combined military forces for months without you knowing we existed. We chose not to. Every crew we've held has been kept alive, unharmed, and will be returned the moment this council demonstrates it understands what that restraint means. The Kesari ambassador, trembling, finally spoke the question burning through every mind in the room. Why? If you possess power like this, why show mercy to species who call for your subjugation? Sarah's answer was quiet, but it carried through the chamber louder than any threat could have. Because power without conscience is exactly what nearly destroyed our own species more than once in our history. We didn't spend 3 years perfecting this technology to build an empire. We spent it to earn a seat at this table as equals, and to offer you a choice most of your civilizations have never had to consider before, coexistence, instead of conquest. The chamber fell into a stunned, uncertain silence. But not every empire in that room was willing to accept an offer of peace from a species they still consider beneath them. And within days, the proudest and most powerful of the Galactic Council's members would make a decision that was about to cost them everything. 10,000 warships descended on a single, undefended-looking planet, utterly convinced of an easy victory. And within hours, every single one of them would understand exactly how wrong they were. Not every civilization in the Galactic Council was willing to accept Sarah's offer. Pride, fear, and 11,000 years of unchallenged supremacy proved a difficult combination to overcome. A coalition of the galaxy's most militarized empires, led by hardliners within the Zerati, Dren, and Kesari governments who refused to believe any species so young could truly hold such power, quietly began assembling what would become the largest invasion fleet in recorded galactic history. More than 10,000 warships. Combined firepower capable of sterilizing a planet's surface within hours. A single brutal objective. Strike Earth directly, before humanity's mysterious technology could be fully understood, and force an unconditional surrender through overwhelming force before the balance of power shifted any further. They believed speed and numbers would settle the matter before diplomacy needed to be considered again. They were catastrophically wrong. The invasion fleet arrived at the edge of Sol's outer system with sensors blazing, weapons armed, and battle formations locked, only to find Earth's visible defenses appearing almost laughably thin. A handful of conventional orbital platforms, a modest planetary defense grid, nothing that should have given a fleet of 10,000 warships even a moment's pause. It was, of course, exactly what humanity wanted them to see. The moment the invasion fleet crossed into Earth's outer defensive perimeter, the true scale of the trap became clear. Thousands of phase-capable human vessels, positioned invisibly throughout the formation for hours before the enemy fleet even noticed anything wrong, activated in perfect, silent coordination. Human ships didn't fire a single shot. They didn't need to. Instead, they phased directly into enemy hulls, disabling weapon systems, propulsion cores, and shield generators from the inside, ship by ship, in a matter of minutes, across the entire 10,000-vessel armada. Aboard the Zerati flagship, Admiral Threx watched in growing horror as, one after another, every weapons console on his bridge went dark, with no explanation, no enemy contact registered, no warning of any kind. "Report," he demanded. "What is attacking us?" The answer came not from his own sensors, but through an open communications channel broadcast to every ship in the fleet simultaneously. Fleet Captain Elena Reyes, calm and unhurried, speaking from a vessel none of their instruments could detect. "Your entire fleet has been disarmed," she said. "Every weapon system, every shield generator, every propulsion core, disabled without a single casualty. You're not under attack. You're being given a choice." Confusion turned to disbelief, then to something far more unsettling. The dawning, humiliating realization of exactly how outmatched they truly were. 10,000 of the galaxy's most advanced warships, representing a combined might of 3 ancient empires, sat completely helpless. Not destroyed, not damaged, simply and quietly rendered powerless by a species they had dismissed as primitive children only months earlier. Dr. Sarah Chen's voice followed moments later, broadcast across the same channel, carrying to every bridge in that trapped, silent armada. "We could have ended this invasion the moment it entered our system," she said. "We could have ended your government's military capability the moment we discovered this technology 3 years ago. We chose not to, not because we couldn't, but because becoming what you feared us to be was never our goal." Aboard the Zerati flagship, Admiral Threx finally understood the full, staggering truth of what had just happened. Not just his fleet, but every assumption his species had ever held about power, strength, and the natural order of the galaxy. Humanity could have annihilated them at any moment over the last 3 months. They had chosen mercy instead. And as 10,000 of the galaxy's most powerful warships sat helpless in Earth's orbit, waiting for a verdict that was entirely humanity's to decide, the ancient empires of the Galactic Council were about to learn that the true cost of this failed invasion wasn't going to be paid in warships or weapons. It was going to be paid in something far harder for proud, ancient civilizations to surrender: their pride. After 11,000 years of ruling the galaxy through fear, the ancient empires were about to do something none of them had ever done before, kneel not in defeat, but in genuine respect. The failed invasion of Earth shattered whatever illusions remained among the Galactic Council's most powerful members. 10,000 disabled warships, quietly released back into the custody of their own governments once the crews acknowledged the terms of surrender, became the single most humiliating military failure in the recorded history of galactic warfare. Not because of the scale of the defeat, but because of how completely and how mercifully it had been delivered. Word spread rapidly across every system represented in the Council. A species barely out of its planetary infancy had disarmed the combined military might of 3 ancient empires without firing a single shot, without a single casualty, and had done so while holding the power to simply erase them from existence entirely. The old order of galactic politics, an order built on the assumption that raw military strength always determined a civilization's place in the universe, had been proven, decisively and permanently, obsolete. The emergency session convened on Nexus Prime 3 days later was unlike any council meeting in its 11,000-year history. For the first time, the delegates did not sit on floating thrones arranged to project dominance. Dr. Sarah Chun had requested and been granted a circular chamber where every representative, human and alien alike, sat at the same level. "We are not here to negotiate the terms of your surrender," Sarah told the assembled delegates, and the words themselves marked a turning point no one in that chamber would ever forget. We're here to propose something none of your civilizations have ever built before. Admiral Threx, still visibly shaken by the memory of his powerless flagship, spoke first. Your species held the power to destroy every government represented in this chamber. What could you possibly want from us, if not submission? Partnership, Sarah answered simply. Not an empire ruled by the strongest voice in the room, but a federation where every species, regardless of age, size, or military strength, stand as an equal. Decisions made through cooperation, not fear. Resources shared, not hoarded. And revolutionary technology, like the one you just watched dismantle your entire invasion fleet, extended only to civilizations that can prove they'll use it responsibly. The chamber remained silent for a long moment, the particular silence of ancient, proud institutions confronting an idea too foreign and too obviously necessary to dismiss outright. It took weeks of negotiation. Reparations were paid by the empires responsible for the invasion, not as punishment, but as an acknowledgement of accountability neither Earth nor the wider galaxy had ever seen enforced before. Military forces were withdrawn from disputed border regions across a dozen systems. Ancient rivalries that had defined galactic politics for millennia began, slowly and imperfectly, giving way to something the history archives of Nexus Prime had never recorded: genuine cooperation between former enemies. One by one, the great civilizations of the galaxy signed the founding charter of what would come to be known as the Galactic Federation. The Zerati, the Dren Hegemony, the Kesari Dominion. Empires that spent 11,000 years building their power through conquest and fear chose, instead, to stand beside the species they had once dismissed as primitive and unworthy. Dr. Sarachin stood at the center of that final signing ceremony, the same chamber where she had once stood alone, surrounded by hostile judges convinced her species deserved subjugation. Now those same judges stood beside her as partners, not rulers. Humanity didn't achieve this by becoming your conquerors, she told the assembled delegates, her voice carrying across a chamber that had, for the first time in its long history, chosen partnership over domination. We achieved it by proving that true strength was never about what you could destroy. It was about what you were willing to protect, and who you were willing to become when you finally had the power to be anything you wanted. As the founding charter was signed, marking the beginning of an era no ancient empire could have imagined just months earlier, one final truth settled over the newly formed Galactic Federation, a truth that would define humanity's legacy across the stars for generations to come. The greatest victory was never about defeating your enemies. It was about inspiring them to stand beside you,